just a Brisbane kind of love. Brisbane kind of love. It's just a Brisbane kind of love.
Hello, Janine. Welcome to the Switchboard.
Hi, Brendan. Thanks so much. Great to be here.
Yeah. So, a bit interested to find out where you come from as an artist. And how did you start down this path?
Ooh, how did I start? I think it started very early. Some of my early photos from when I was about 2 was me in front of a chalkboard drawing a portrait of my rocking horse. So there's these really cute little photos, and it's sort of like art found me. And from then on, I've always had a pen, a pencil, a piece of crayon in my hand. When I'd spend a fair bit of time with Dad at work, and I'd just sit opposite him, his desk, and just sketch his portrait. So his, the wall behind his desk was always full of portraits that I'd done of him or somebody else, and I've just always loved it. So much that when I thought I'd always was going to be a teacher, actually. And then my high school art teacher suggested that I go to art college and put in my portfolio to QCA, and ended up going there for 4 years. So it's sort of I guess it's always been part of me. I just kind of went with the flow with it a bit, rather than actually saying this is what I'm going to be. It took me a long time, actually, to be able to say, when people said, what do you do? And I'm an artist, because I wasn't sure whether that was something that defined me or who I was, or, but I'm quite comfortable in my own skin these days to say that.
You mentioned your dad earlier.
Yes.
So what did your dad do?
Dad was an accountant, and which seems interesting because both my parents were from an accounting background, and I went everything, give me sport and art. Dad grew up in Sandgate and Wooloowin in Brisbane, and he moved to Mackay, way obviously before I was born, and met my mum. So I was actually born in Mackay. When my Nan died, Dad had to finalise all the estate, and so we moved back to Wooloowin and only lived there for a year or so before moving out to Beaudesert. And Dad took on his own business he bought into a partnership for a Ford dealership. So we were sort of always around cars, and I think he thought I was going to be a mechanic for a while, because I spent all my time out in the workshop with the guys, as a little thing underneath the cars, and checking out how it worked, and, what colours they were, what colour the next Cobra was going to be, that sort of thing. But it was great fun. So yeah, Dad was great. He taught me how to swim, and that led me down a path of, becoming a competitive swimmer. He unfortunately died when I was 15, while he was playing golf, and I ended up going to getting a sporting scholarship to go to St Peter's. So where we lived out in Beaudesert for pretty much most of my childhood, when I was 15, moved back to Brisbane, and so spent a fair consistent amount of time in and around Brisbane in the late 80s, 90s, and going to art college, of course. So,
So you mentioned a sporting scholarship.
Yes.
Yes. What sort of sport are you into?
I was a swimmer. I was a bit of a late bloomer, though. I didn't learn to swim until I was 9. I guess being out in the country, there's not a huge amount of opportunity, and not a great deal, a number of pools out there. But when I was 9, I loved it. Dad taught me how to swim. By the time I was 11, I was competing in Brisbane and regional state and then state titles, and then winning, gold medals at state for a few different strokes, and having to travel to Chandler, because as soon as you sort of hit a level within sport, you need to travel, if you're regional, to be able to, achieve the goals. So I swam under Mr. Bernie Wakefield, who was actually Susie O'Neill's first coach, and managed to win several state gold medals, and I competed in the Olympic trials in '84, just because I qualified for the time, but I didn't qualify for the team because it's pretty hotly contested, and when you're an enthusiastic 15-year-old, doesn't always translate into fast times in the pool as well. So when you're put under that much pressure, but it was really it was a lot of fun. And then sporting scholarship for St Peter's, and kind of lost my mojo a little bit, I think, after Dad died, because it was something that we kind of had done together, and we'd sort of had Olympic aspirations, because my uncle was killed in Korea, and the next Olympic Games was '88 in Seoul, so we were looking at going and visiting his grave, and there's a whole family story around connections within Korea and my uncle's adventures there with the army, and it didn't kind of happen, but I guess it sort of led me down another path as well, because as you probably know, once I finished art college, I went into coaching and ended up coaching at the Queensland Academy of Sport, coached Olympians as part of my scholarship with Queensland Academy of Sport. I was one of the only first ever female swimming coaches to get to that standard, and it was fun. I ended up coaching Susie O'Neill, who I'd swum with when she was a little bit younger than me, Sam Riley, all of those. So there's quite a lot of interesting stories in and around that too. So
And you studied art at the QCA.
I did, when it was at Seven Hills campus, so at the original venue before it moved to South Brisbane. So,
and where did your practice come from? Was there a particular form or type of art that really inspired you and took you forward in that?
Oh yeah, well when I started, I actually started in printmaking because I loved lino prints, etching, lithography, and my lecturer Russell Craig, was fantastic actually, and we're still friends to this day. And he's opened one of my exhibitions, and we've been in touch from there. I had a great fascination for exploring what materials could do. So I hadn't done a lot of printmaking when I was at high school, and so to learn different techniques in and around lithography was really terrific. I worked on a transfer technique, which was we've sort of always looking for different ways of being able to get the textures and patterns and things that I was looking for, and so we worked on a transfer technique, which was great because he apparently was still teaching that to some of the students right through, which is awesome to be a part of. I then thought, what else can I do? So I think I must have really annoyed my course coordinator at QCA, because pretty much every year I'd walk into his office and go, can I try? And it was sculpture, painting, drawing. I would change my major up a lot, because I guess I didn't want to be kind of stuck and rigid in a particular medium. I wanted to learn as much as I could, and I thought that's the whole purpose of getting an education, is actually to push the boundaries of what you think and then be able to if I come up with an idea or a concept for something, I can, in my mind's eye, think, oh, look, that would be fantastic as a drawing, as a print. What if we did that as a sculpture or an installation? So because I've got that background, I've got a lot of, in my kit bag to draw from for my work. And so I guess that's more where that interdisciplinary practice comes in, which is probably more about the number of things you can do rather than the discipline of sticking to one thing. So, yeah.
You can draw inspiration from other types of...
Lots of, absolutely. There's, there's a whole dialogue of what goes on in my brain. Yeah.
So what are you going to be exhibiting in August?
Oh, well, because it's Brisbaneality, it actually sits really well with a series of works that I've done over the last few years. With the introduction of the Brisbane Portrait Prize, I have been, naturally exploring more and more portraits. And because I love people's stories and the narrative behind, connections between people and place, I had always gravitated to doing portraits. I mean, from when I was doing my dad's portrait as a kid. So this time round, I've drawn from a lot of the work that I had previously entered in Brisbane Portrait Prize. There's also work from last year's Brisbane Portrait Prize, which was it was a real, it was a bit chuffed actually. It was a portrait of John Collins from Powderfinger that was a finalist for the Brisbane Portrait Prize. So you can sort of get more Brisbane, I guess, than that. So that will be one of the feature works. And there's my auntie, my dad's sister, used to. She worked for yellow cabs and black and white cabs in Brisbane for over 50 years, and she recently passed this year, but for her 80th birthday I did her portrait. So there's quite a few stories in and around her tales of Brisbane that will be in that portrait. There's another portrait of a very senior artist was senior lecturer at Brisbane Institute of TAFE, and David Smith is now 94 years old. So his portrait will be included as well. I did it a few years ago. There's also one of Beck Mack, who people would know from Triple Z and Pop's Art. Beck and I went to QCA together, so we started, I won't say what year because we'll just date us all, but anyway, we're very proud of our seniority. So there's quite a collection of works, and also there's a recent one that's just commenced actually last night, of Andrew Smith, who has a wonderful connection obviously with the Orient Hotel and the Brisbane music scene back in the day, and also vicariously a connection with Powderfinger too. So yeah.
Tell me a bit about your connection with John Collins.
Oh yeah, well Johnny and I, otherwise known as JC to everybody else in the music world, we've known each other since primary school, because he is also a Beaudesert boy, and we were always friends from when we first met. Probably I think it was like grade 6 or 7, and then. It's quite funny because when I say to people, oh, we went to school together, and people often look at me and go, you went to Brisbane Boys Grammar, but yes, that was from grade 9 onwards. And anyway, we always stayed in touch when he went to boarding school, and then a couple of years later I went to boarding school, and we'd send each other letters about how awful the boarding school food was, because that's what you compare schools by. Everyone I knew we went to boarding school had the worst boarding school food, but I mean mine, they managed to make everything taste like onion, even the chocolate slice. It was amazing ability. But anyway, lots of fun stories in and around that. And we'd sort of, I guess once we went to uni, we lost touch a little bit, and years later, when Powderfinger was starting to become quite well known, I started listening to their music, and as part of my day job when I was at uni, I was managing the record bar at Myer, and I was listening to this music. I was thinking, this is really, really good, and I was enjoying it and thinking this is really great. And then I saw a Courier Mail article on Powderfinger and who the members of Powderfinger were, and I was going, oh, fantastic, that's awesome. So I kind of like the fact, and I've told him this as well, that I actually really enjoyed the music, not because I knew that he was in the band, but I started to like the music first, and then realised that one of my best mates from school is which just made it even better. So yeah.
Fantastic. I mean, like, Switchboard is really about bringing artists together, connecting people and connecting artistic community and to each other. And I'm just wondering, what your thoughts are around that. What role do you see for groups such as ours, or what benefit do you see for artists and community in this regard?
Yeah, I think this sort of organisation is fantastic, and I've been involved in quite a few regional arts groups along the way. And I think that when you have strong creative and artistic individuals and presence, and people who are interested in delving into the arts but promoting other people's artwork, I think it creates a wonderful collective, because artists tend to kind of lock themselves away a bit in their studio, and we're quite insular and a little bit distant from each other. And the idea of having a arts collective where people come together and can share ideas and cross promote each other, I think creates a really strong presence in the areas that they are. And from what I can see with Switchboard, it's not just about being involved in Brisbane, but it can be transferable just about anywhere as well. So it's, as a professional organisation, I think that kind of, it's a really good thing.
Thank you very much.
And I know that you know what I'm talking about.